So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I don't know research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome a bit late to You Can't Just Measure Time, Gish with Vish number 8, which of course means we're not late, we're completely on time, because time can't be measured. Let's just take a drink for wonderful technical difficulties. What in fact happened was Xfinity just decided to say, oh hey, you know that internet you pay for? What if we gave you like 1% of it? To which, I was like, no, thank you. I would like
What about 100?
Yeah, I mean 100 would be nice. I take a little less if strictly necessary. Also, I think I have to update my my live chat here, 'cause I don't think it's up to date. It was not. All right, so we've got a couple things to go through first. First of all, I got a item from my wish list. I got a French press, and the message says, "Hey, longtime listener, recent Patreon supporter, keep up the Lord's work. Enjoy, Corey." And it gives a full name, which I'm not reading. Thank you very much, Corey. I really appreciate it. It is currently brewing some cold brew coffee in the refrigerator as we speak. I will be
Nice.
having my first cup tomorrow. I'm actually going to be drinking it hot, though. My plan is to brew it cold, strain it into a cup, then put that in the microwave, and drink the cold brew coffee hot. Because the goal is not to drink cold coffee. That would just be iced coffee. My goal is to drink hot coffee with a lower acidity.
Someone who worked at a coffee shop for 6.5 years, I could think of a dozen other ways for you to drink hot French press coffee without having to go through all that.
I mean, it's not much to go through. It's literally just sitting in my refrigerator, until I microwave it, and then it's done. I touched it for like 40 seconds. It's not a lot of work.
I'm just saying you could drink it within minutes instead of having to wait a day.
But I don't want the acid from a hot brew.
This is why you drink a really dark roast coffee, because they're not acidic.
It's already
they're
pretty
not as
dark,
acidic.
and it's still kind of a problem for my heartburn. So
I mean, is it like French roast dark, or is it just, something that says dark roast? Like, because
literally French roast dark. Literally a French roast dark roasted coffee.
French roast, for those of you in the audience that don't know, it's roasted almost to the point where the beans catch on fire. So,
and that's exactly what this bag of coffee was.
Yeah, it smells like a campfire.
And yet, I still feel like a little bit too much acid. I guess maybe I'm just getting old. I am 160 billion years or whatever old. So,
I mean, you might have a sensitivity by now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, that maybe we'll see how it goes. Anyway, okay, so there is that. There's one other big thing, which is every once in a while, not too often, but every once in a while, I do get a message or a comment or something pointing out that, young Earth creationism is on the decline. It doesn't really matter. Who really cares? I want to point something out to everyone. Okay, after a 2-week bout of complete inaction from the United States House of Representatives, where they could not select a speaker.
Comical incompetence.
Yes. They finally selected a speaker, which is overall probably a good thing, right? Because then they can actually, do anything other than try to select a speaker. But the guy they chose, Mike Jackson, something. He's got a very generic name. I think it's Johnson. Actually, I'm just don't double check. Because why get it wrong when I could just get it right?
Johnson, because he's a dickhead.
Okay, there you go. He is now second in line for the presidency of the United States of America. He's 2 deaths away from controlling the largest military in the world, as well as the world's largest nuclear arsenal. He is in control, to a large extent, of what is said on the floor of the House of Representatives, one of the 2 legislative wings of the United States government. And he is someone who believes the Earth is 6,000 years old, that special creation is real. He writes for Answers in Genesis. He has an author bio on Answers in Genesis and links to multiple articles on their website. And he believes that the root cause of school shootings is the teaching of evolution. So if it were ever a good time to be a counter-creationist channel, in terms of importance on the stage of not just the United States, but the world, because let's remember, the United States subjects the entire world to its batshit policies.
Yes, it does.
This is a good time for this. I don't know if it's going to be a good time financially for it, but it's an important time for this channel to exist. So if you like this channel existing, and you want to keep people like Mike Johnson safely contained, maybe spread the word that this is nonsense that people actually believe and how to counter it by doing things like sharing my videos. All right, we got a few super chats in while we were doing technical difficulties. I will read them now. Astra Ryu means star dinosaur in Chinese for $4.99. Says, Dapper, you can't just measure time. Is late to the stream. Seems someone forgot how to measure time themselves. True. A pterodactyl in French limestone.
I mean, you can't just measure time. That's why this didn't start on time.
Exactly. A pterodactyl in French limestone geek for €5 says, let's get some super chats going so that Dapper has to start the stream with emptying his drink. Also, hit like to dodge that pesky hobbit. Sorry, I can't read apparently. Let's see. DM scientist, chemist, auto mechanic wing. Rest in peace, John Morris Pendleton. For $5 says, wow, one really can't measure time. How else do you explain the stream starting 20 minutes late? Yeah, good question. And Turkey Sloth, who's been a member for 1 month and is at the tetrapod level, sends a Murphy emoji with a thumbs up. Thank you. I appreciate the thumbs up, the support. By the way, if you are wondering, we are not going to be doing Power Rangers after this because now that I'm late, I have even less time to get from this show over to the Unnamed Tavern over on Chesh's channel. If anyone wants to put a link to that in the description, the chat, please do. All right, Vishanti, do you have anything before we get into the rules?
Nothing that won't take up unnecessarily off-topic amounts of time.
Okay, I will say this. Go check out the channel Fossil Daddy, where Vishanti was recently featured.
Okay, so last week I said that I was going to do another collaboration with Fossil Daddy, and that came out this week. And while I'm stalling for time, I'm actually going to get the link so that I can put that in the chat so you guys can watch it. Because Fossil Daddy needs more subscribers, and also it's a pretty hilarious video.
Yep. All right. So let's take a look at the rules. So we play a little
Dapper's better at promoting my non-existent channel than I am, so this is kind of like telling you where we are right now.
So we are here primarily to look at a speech by Dwayne Gish about the age of the universe. Hence the title and the thumbnail with spiraling clock and whatnot. Yeah. Which, by the way, I made myself out of math. I use a modulo function. That was fun. Use a modulo function. I'm going to go with a no on that one. Anyway.
An Intrigued Feline is asking, Unnamed Tavern is tomorrow?
No, it's supposed to be today, isn't it? An Intrigued Feline, confer with Chesh and find out what's going on. If there is no Unnamed Tavern today, then we are doing Power
Rangers time.
Yeah, if there is... See, I'm confused now. Mostly because I've been scrambling around between that and this and trying to get the internet fixed. Anyway, we do have a drinking game that goes along with these shows, normally. And today I am drinking some Kraken and Cola. Although my Cola bottle had a picture of Santa on it, but it was like weird 3D corporate art style Santa. And it's also October, and I'm not okay with any of that. Like, I don't mind Santa on his own, but keep it to December and not corporate art style Santa. I want like a painterly Santa. You know? Anyway, so we will take a drink whenever Dwayne Gish says something that's just so stupid we kind of have to. We will also take a drink anytime Dwayne Gish tells a joke that doesn't land or a story that didn't happen. Now, it's a little bit of a judgment call, but if he tells a story about how he owned some guy in a debate and then everybody clapped when obviously he didn't, we're probably going to take a drink for that, because that's probably a story that he actually was arguing with a shampoo bottle, and then, the soap clapped or something, and now he's just pretending that that was a real conversation with real humans. We'll also take a drink if Dwayne Gish mentions the National Socialist German Workers' Party, or anything closely associated with it. Look that up if you don't know what that is. We will also take a drink if Dwayne Gish cites a source, which he usually doesn't, but when we check it, it not only fails to support his claim, but it actively contradicts his claim. Because remember, one of the laws of FLIRF is that a FLIRF citation never supports the claim. There's a modified version of that for Young Earth creationism, which is if a Young Earth creationist ever cites a non-creationist source, it never actually supports a claim in favor that itself supports Young Earth creationism, and it more often than not directly contradicts the claim being made.
It never.
Yeah.
The link to the Meme Tavern says that the stream starts in 26 hours.
Not today, then. We're doing Power Rangers. Boom.
Heck yeah!
We're doing Lightspeed Rescue, everybody. We're gonna do
Go Power Rangers!
Oh, that's not the theme song for this season.
It's the only theme song I know.
There's so many good ones, though. I'll send afterwards. I'll send you a link to a video that contains all the Power Rangers theme songs.
I probably won't listen to it, but
Just do
thanks.
it. Okay, Turkey Salt for $5 says, Godzilla, we just need an AIG as a bag of dicks in the people's house.
Just what we need.
Yeah, we'll take a drink for that.
And that's a great pun also because Mike Johnson.
Yeah, Johnson, well named apparently.
Yeah, I'm 12.
It's okay. But that does remind me, we will actually be taking a drink. If anyone puts in a Godzilla in the chat, or a Ghidorah, or a Mothra, those are membership rewards. You get those.
And Intrigued Feline also said check the title of the stream. So the countdown timer says tomorrow, but the name of the stream is 10:28. So I am Confucian.
An Intrigued Feline, please go yell at Chesh. Because
yeah, I am Confucian.
I now no longer know what the heck is happening.
Time's not real today, everybody. Just letting you know.
Yeah. Anyway, so yes, if a super chat or membership milestone chat comes in that is any of the kind of emojis, we'll take a drink. Also, if you put in a super chat or a membership milestone chat to the effect that AIG is a bag of dicks, which I make easy if you remember because I have literally an emoji for it, we will take a drink. Also, we will take a drink for gifted memberships. So if you buy some memberships, we'll take a drink for each one. If you gift 5, we'll take 5 drinks. Now, that does stop somewhere around 30, where we'll just add 30 to the drink counter, and then I'll just drain my drink and go get another one. Also, if one of us can successfully predict where Gish is going to go, we'll take a drink for that. Also, I don't think it'll come up, but we do have ad hominem, which I will explain if it comes up, because I'm pretty sure it won't, because this doesn't have anything to do with human evolution. Although, given the penchant for Young Earth creationists just going wildly off topic for no reason, there's a fair chance that for some reason in this talk about the age of the universe, Gish might bring up human evolution anyway. So, yes.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Chesh fixed it, so the stream is in 2 hours. So
I'm going to be late to that.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't cut this stream short just to be there. So my audience is the one that I really need to make sure that I take care of, because they're the ones who do things like, support me on Patreon, get memberships on the channel. So you guys are going to get the full stream. So I might be a little bit late to Chesh's stream. So there you go. No Power Rangers though. Anyway, let's just get into this. I don't think we have anything more that we need to say.
Based upon this.
Do it.
Oh yeah. So basically, Dwayne Gish is saying that the solar system couldn't form, and he's going to talk about angular momentum. And yeah, there you go.
Evolutionary idea. First prediction we'd make is that all the planets would be orbiting the sun in the same direction, which they do.
So that actually would not be the complete prediction, right? If planets form directly out of the planetary disk, right, the protoplanetary disk, then yes, they should all orbit in the same direction. However, there is a possibility of gravitational capture of a extrasolar planet, which could result in a retrograde orbit for a planet. That does not currently happen in our solar system. I don't think we know of any planetary systems where it does happen, but it's not impossible. And we know that there are rogue planets out there, which is planets that are just they're smaller than brown dwarfs. They're massive bodies that are just orbiting the center of the galaxy, just like any other, just like a star. If one of those comes close enough to a planet of sufficient mass in a star system, then it could actually gravitationally capture into a retrograde orbit. If you've ever played a Kerbal Space Program, you might know that the cheapest way to get into orbit around the biggest planet there, Jool, is actually to do a gravity capture around one of its heavier moons. And if you plan that right, that can get you into a retrograde orbit around Jool. It's actually not that hard to do, if that's what you want to do. So yeah. Now, granted, you can force it to happen by manipulating your exact trajectory, which is not something nature is going to do, which is why we don't see it much. But it's not impossible. And this is one of the things that Dwayne Gish is going to ignore, is the fact that the conservation of angular momentum, one, means that you can allows for the exchange of momentum, and two, doesn't just completely negate the possibility of retrograde motion. He's just going to ignore that.
But we'd also assume that all the moons would be orbiting their planet
Only in the same way as I talked about for the planets.
in the same direction. That is not true.
Correct, it is not true. Would anyone like to guess the reason why that is not true? Right. Gravitational capture. Yeah, so if the angle's right, and you have something that's coming in towards a planet from the retrograde direction relative to the relative motions, right? It can even be that the thing that's coming in is actually orbiting prograde, but because the planet that's going to be capturing it is actually approaching it from the retrograde direction, that can still mean that this moon is going to capture into a retrograde orbit. That's just a thing that can happen. And when you say, oh, well, what about the conservation of angular momentum? Yeah, that all evens out. That moon will actually add as much angular momentum as it loses to the planet that it is captured around, which will ever so slightly raise that planet's orbit. I mean, it's going to be extremely slight because all of the moons that are in retrograde orbits are absolutely tiny compared to the planets that they orbit. But that is what will happen. And guess what? Now you have a retrograde moon, and the conservation of angular momentum is preserved. Hooray! It's almost like it's just a buzzword that Gish learned one day, and he never bothered to actually investigate what it actually means.
Do you think he knows about Venus and Uranus not?
Oh, I
rotating
think
the same
I
way
think
as
he's
the
going to
other?
talk about it, and that he's going to
Get
be
it wrong
just as dumb.
somehow?
Yep.
Okay.
If that happens, we take a drink for it.
The four outer moons of Jupiter are going around in the wrong direction. The other 17 moons are going this way, and the
4 outer moons.
I'm going to let that pass because this was in 1997, and we didn't know about as many moons as we do now.
That's not my problem. It's just 4 outer moons. Is he talking about the Galilean moons? Because I don't think
No.
they're the outer moons.
He's not talking about the Galilean moons. I don't know which ones he's talking about in particular, but the 4 Galilean moons are not orbiting retrograde.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. So, I don't know exactly which moons he means, but in 1997, I'm sure that the 4 outermost moons are not what we think of as the 4 outermost moons now. Although, like we said before, there's that question about when does it start counting as a moon? Because if it's just anything in a more or less stable orbit, then every single little dust particle in the rings of any gas giant count as a moon. So Saturn has trillions of moons or something. That seems
Yeah,
wrong.
I mean, there's a difference between what we call satellites and what we call moons. So
Yeah.
all moons are satellites, but not all satellites are moons.
Chesh is giving up. Wait, why are you giving up, Chesh?
four
I
outer
think she's
moons.
having issues with the timing of the stream.
Chesh, just send me a message. I won't be in there before the stream ends. Just send me a message.
Are going that way. One of the moons of Neptune is going around in the wrong direction.
That's
That's
one,
true
though.
of Saturn.
Hey,
Okay.
I'm going to take a drink for him being right that there are retrograde orbiting moons. Not because I'm thirsty or anything, definitely because this is actually him getting it right.
There's a number of moons that are going around their planet in the wrong direction.
We
Wrong
already said
direction.
Now,
Yeah, I mean, look, there is a preferred direction in the solar system. It's prograde, right? So that when you look Yeah, I don't want to describe it. It's the way that everything else orbits.
Furthermore, we would also predict that each planet would be rotating on their axis in the same direction.
Again, with the caveats.
Which that is not true. The planet Venus is rotating on its axis in the wrong direction.
I knew it.
And that's true of Uranus, and it's true of Pluto.
Actually,
Yay for him pronouncing Uranus correctly. Hooray.
It's actually not true of Uranus, though.
No,
So-
it's on its side. It's
Yeah,
like
Uranus has such an extreme axial tilt that it's actually not possible to define whether it's orbiting or rotating prograde or retrograde.
yeah.
Because basically at some parts of its orbit, it's rotating retrograde. At other points, it's rotating prograde. And then at other points, it's sort of rotating like roughly perpendicular to either, which, okay.
I love my special little planet there. I love it.
Mm.
There's a reason that modern astrologers chose that to represent Aquarius, like to be the ruler of Aquarius, because I'ma just do what I want. Physics, nah, you can't box me in. Can you tell if I'm going this way or that way? Good luck. I'm just do it.
Yeah. So what can happen to make a planet rotate in quote unquote the wrong direction? It's pretty simple. It's an impact, yeah. So what happened was at some point, Venus probably caught up to a planet ahead of it in the orbit and had a very high energy impact with that smaller planet. And unlike Earth, where it formed a moon, in this case, the planets were of relative masses such that they just merged together. But the overall result of that was that the rotation was reversed, which also, because of the conservation of angular momentum, would have kicked Venus into a somewhat higher orbit. And this would have been significant, although by this point, the effects of like the other inner planets as well as tidal forces from Jupiter, which are even significant on Venus, would probably have settled it out into a, the resonant orbit that it has now. So we probably wouldn't be able to measure directly how much that would have changed its orbit. But yeah, this doesn't do anything to the angular momentum, right? Because angular momentum just has to be preserved. You can have part of a system gain negative angular momentum as long as some other part of the system gains an even bigger positive angular momentum, right? So if we just give arbitrary units to angular momentum, because it doesn't matter what the actual unit is, right? So let's say I have a object spinning and rotating around a sun, a star, right? And it has an angular momentum in its spin of +1. And I say, oh, hold on. -2 spin after an impact. Or sorry, -1 spin, right? So now it has lost 2 angular momentum units. Well, guess what? As long as its orbit increases by 2 units of angular momentum in terms of how you're measuring that angular momentum, then it all works out. It's still fine. You've still preserved angular momentum. I don't see how this is hard to understand. But anyway.
Now, you see, all this supposedly came out of a rotating cloud of dust and gas, everything going around in the same direction. So you'd predict, you see, from that, which direction moons would be orbiting their planets, what direction they would be rotating on their axis and all of that. But we have all of these contradictions. Now, if there was...
Yeah, you might predict that there would be no such thing as retrograde motion from a rotating, disk of dust and gas if you didn't think about it at all and you didn't know about things like collisions or gravitational interactions. So, yeah, that's a pretty big if there, right? Like this is Dwayne Gish just doing a rough like back of the envelope calculation with like one significant figure to try to figure out what's going on in the universe. And then when the universe doesn't exactly line up with his like 0 precision estimate based on like a toddler's level of understanding of physics, he's like, well, I guess then the science is fake. No, man, you just never bothered to think about science, or you don't understand it, or both. That's what's actually happening. All right, play again.
Was just one moon that's going around in the wrong direction, you might come up with some ad hoc assumption of some kind or other to try to account for that.
No.
Yeah, just take a drink.
It's not an ad hoc assumption. What the heck? Ugh. This is already dumb.
Yeah, gravitational interactions are ad hoc assumptions when you're talking about a system dominated by gravity. Oh, okay.
Orbital mechanics is just ad hoc assumptions, Dapper.
An intrigued feline says, how much kinetic energy would be needed to get a planet to go the opposite way around the sun? Would it even be possible? I mean, I don't know if that's an answerable question because I don't know what scenario you're envisioning for the starting position. All that would really need to happen is that a rogue planet would come into a star system from a retrograde direction and then gravitationally interact with another body in that system such that it lost enough energy to capture around the star, but it would then capture in a retrograde motion, which, I mean, any amount of kinetic energy that would allow it to be in orbit would be enough. If you're asking, like, what if it were a star or a planet that was like I guess stationary compared to the star, and then you were going to try to like kick it into a retrograde orbit, well, then you could just do the mass calculation to figure out, how much energy you would need to get that mass to go to the orbital velocity, and like the amount of kinetic energy isn't going to change based on direction of the orbit. If you were to say, like, what would it take to get Jupiter to go retrograde or Mars to go retrograde? Well, it's just twice the current momentum. So figure out the mass of the planet, its actual current speed, and then you just have to figure out how much force it would take to take that speed and basically double it, but in the other direction. So, yeah, I don't really know how to answer that question because it's not really formed in a way that's easily answerable. My unfinished channel for $5 says, Gish, if the solar system formed naturally, there wouldn't be anything strange happening at all. Science. Yeah, nah, lol. Yeah, basically. Yeah. The thing is, if everything were perfect, right? If we had nice, perfect circular orbits, and we had perfectly harmonic orbits, and everything was prograde, and there's this wonderful mathematical precision, you know that Dwayne Gish would be saying, well, nature doesn't do things this orderly. It must have been God. And yet when nature is here, being a little bit messy, as it normally is, he's like, well, these theories that, I don't understand with any nuance, because that's unwelcome nuance, would just naively predict everything being nice and orderly, and yet nature is messy. So, hey, guess what, Gish? Every scientific model is a simplification that allows us to make predictions. But because it's a simplification, it can, and quite often does, leave out things that at the margin can cause things to not go according to the exact predictions. And so you get this kind of statistical noise. And basically you're saying that because a simplified model doesn't perfectly reflect the reality that you see around you today, that therefore science is wrong. And that is an invalid way to think about this. DM Scientist Chemist Auto Mechanic Wing for $2 says, God did it clearly has more explanatory power. Well, ironically, it has both all of the explanatory power and none of the explanatory power. Because ironically, the fewer phenomenon a particular explanation explains, but the better it explains them, then generally the better explanatory power it has. Once you have an explanation that explains literally any possible observation, while it does explain anything, so in one sense it has all the explanatory power, in the other sense, since it doesn't actually make any real predictions, because it can account for literally any possible observation, it simultaneously actually explains nothing. It's kind of like words, right? Words are actually tend to be more useful the narrower in scope they become, right? So in English we have like a word like nice. Nice just doesn't mean much other than I feel good feelings about this thing. I'm like, oh, nice hat. What does that mean? It means I like your hat. It doesn't mean that your hat is pretty. It doesn't mean it matches your outfit. It doesn't mean that it is following current fashion trends. It doesn't mean anything about the shape of the hat, the color of the hat, anything like that. It just means I kind of like your hat. Now, if I say, hey, that hat matches your suit well, I like it, and it's a very stylish profile, that tells you what I think about that hat in more detail. Those are more useful words than nice. That's why a lot of English teachers and English professionals will tell you that if you use the word nice in your papers or whatever, you're probably going to get a downgrade on your grade because nice doesn't mean anything. I've actually had teachers say that they would fail students for using the word nice because it's so meaningless.
Great.
I wouldn't do that, but it also is not the sign of a particularly adept author. So yeah. The scientific explanations are kind of like that too, right? If it can explain literally everything, it's probably not really explaining anything.
But when you have...
Sorry, not literally everything. Literally anything. There's a difference. It's an important difference.
so many moons going in the wrong direction, of number of planets, when
No planets are orbiting the wrong direction, Dwayne. You got to distinguish between orbit and rotation. They're not the same thing. Venus isn't orbiting retrograde. It is rotating retrograde.
you have several planets rotating on their axis.
All planets rotate on their axis.
Yeah, I'm going to take a drink.
In the wrong direction.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Okay, fair enough.
Something is wrong with the theory.
Something's not wrong with the theory, bro. You just don't understand orbital mechanics, but okay.
Yep. He has less orbital mechanics understanding than someone who just started working at NASA who hasn't played Kerbal Space Program, which is less than anyone who has. Which is a bit of a meme. There's a little meme about like how much I understand orbital mechanics, and like there's a little tick up after getting a degree in like physics. There's a little tick up after like getting a job at NASA, and there's a giant upward slope after starting to play Kerbal Space Program.
They should
Now
make that
is-
mandatory for all like NASA astronauts and like engineers and stuff.
Yeah, here's the final
Like,
part of
here's
your.
your training program. Just play Kerbal for a
Yeah.
few weeks.
Oh, you're gonna do flight planning for us? Okay. Here, make this like part of the interview. Here's Kerbal Space Program. You need to get from here, and then they like pull a planet out of the hat, land, and come back with this much delta V. Go. And if you can't do it,
Yep.
can't work for NASA.
Yep.
I mean, assuming that you're doing something like flight planning. If you're just being like the NASA accountant, I guess it doesn't really matter because you shouldn't be in charge of that anyway. But yeah.
Yeah. You can still play it though in your spare time.
Oh yeah, you should definitely play Kerbal Space Program.
Science ordinarily,
Dr. Tapioca Weasel, doesn't KSP do pairwise approximations? Yes, it does. But that's also what NASA usually does in most of their orbital mechanics, because it's good enough for a spacecraft. It's not good enough for the long-term orbits of actual like planet mass bodies, but it's more than good enough for getting to the moon or Mars or Jupiter. So, yep.
you make observations,
Dapper,
and
can you
then you
imagine
establish.
getting a memo from one of your employees, like your new hires, and they're like, you've assigned them Kerbal Space Program, and then like a week later you get instructions unclear, have actually landed on moon. Like the astronauts radio you back and they're like, we're pretty sure this was supposed to be the moon, but
Nice.
Some sort of hypothesis or a theory. On the basis of that, you make predictions. Then you either make further observations or you conduct an experiment to see if these added observations or experimental results will agree with your predictions.
Yeah, but Dwayne, I'm taking a drink. Hold on. Dwayne, the problem
it's
is
taking
that-
so long to get to the point
Yeah.
that I can't keep the topic in my head long enough to figure out what his point is.
Well, right now he's saying that the solar system violates the predictions of the nebular hypothesis, combined with the conservation of angular momentum. But the problem is that he's wrong about that, right? Those two things combined say that there should be a preferred orbital direction for the solar system. And there is. And it says that there should be a preferred spin direction for bodies in the solar system, which there is. It does not predict that there should be never any retrograde motion in the solar system. That is not a prediction of the nebular hypothesis. But because his baby level understanding of it leads him to that conclusion, he now thinks that the observation of retrograde motion anywhere in the solar system is apparently a problem for the nebular hypothesis, which it is not. Now, if anything in the solar system had like a 50-50 chance, or even like, a 10% chance of retrograde motion in either its orbit or spin, then I'd be like, okay, yeah, that's weird. That's a bit of a problem. We should look into that. That doesn't seem right. But that's not the case.
Different spin, therefore God.
If they do, it establishes a more firm basis for your theory. But if they contradict your predictions, you abandon your theory.
Yeah, but you got to actually get the predictions right. And also, you don't have to abandon a theory. You can also modify it.
You could just modify it. Yeah.
Yeah. Pelagic Tunicate did it as best. Oh, sorry. Pelagic Tunicate did it has best explanatory power. There we go. For €5, says, I love learning orbital mechanics in Kerbal Space Program from the one and only Scott Manley with a Godzilla. Take a drink for the Godzilla. Yeah, look, I don't like the degree to which he's a bit of a Musk sycophant. However, his KSP tutorials are top-notch, which is why I pretty much only watch his KSP videos, and I ignore most of his Space News videos, because I would rather get them from someone who doesn't actually take seriously Musk's idea that maybe we'll actually launch a starship to Mars next year.
Hey, remember like 10 years ago, 15 years ago when he said we were going to do that and then we never did?
Yeah, we were supposed to already have a city on Mars by now, according to Musk's initial timeline.
Yeah. It's okay, guys. He's just working on it.
Also, we were supposed to have death trap subways. That still hasn't happened.
Yep.
The closest we've come to that is a underground tunnel full of taxis with one lane that is literally slower than walking because multiple people have timed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we got.
Yeah. One lane tunnels. I love that. That's so smart. What a genius plan.
Yeah. Okay, look, for legal reasons, I'm not saying this was a scam. What I'm saying is, it seems like a dishonest scheme designed to get money out of the city of Las Vegas.
Allegedly, in my opinion.
Right.
It was fraud.
Look, it seems like
allegedly,
it was fraud.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
It's been falsified. On that basis, this idea that the solar system evolved from a rotating cloud of dust and gas has been falsified numerous times.
Just drink.
No,
but do they?
God, it has not. I am gonna cry.
Consider their theory falsified? No. Why? They don't have any other theory.
Or it could be that the actual astrophysicists who understand this far better than you ever possibly could, Dwayne, have thought of this. Because here's the thing, right? If you, as a non-expert in a field, feel like you have found something involving basic high school level physics that none of the experts have thought of, and that completely overturns the current paradigm in that field, the most likely cause of this feeling that you have is that you're wrong. They have thought of that, and you just don't know what the right answer is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I guarantee you, astronomers are aware of this.
You see, the only alternative is the solar system was created. It didn't come out.
That's the only other alternative.
Take a drink for... The only explanation for retrograde motion is literal magic. Yeah, okay. Cool. Retrograde motion, completely inexplicable. Except for God. What are orbital interactions anyway? How does gravity work?
Nah.
Created by some evolutionary process at all.
You know, Dapper, I've heard young Earth creationists before argue that atomic bonds can't really be fully explained, you know, by our current models of physics, because the Bible says that Jesus holds all things together by him and through him. So he's actually the one holding the bonds together between.
I'm sorry. So like Oppenheimer and Einstein got together and were smarter than God. Is that the conclusion?
I'm not going to say that, but the idea is that science doesn't know why chemical bonds are a thing. They don't know why atoms like stay together or what the strong and weak nuclear forces are. That's actually Jesus holding it together.
Look, here's the thing. Even if it's true that the strong and weak nuclear force are literally just Jesus holding things together, which I'm not going to argue for or against because I'm not sure what that would mean, but let's just say it's true, doesn't that still mean that science understands the predictable ways in which he does it, and can therefore manipulate those things in order to cause predictable effects like explosions?
So, Oppenheimer and Einstein, does this mean... Am I going to get in trouble for saying Jewish physics?
Not from me. You might from YouTube. I don't know. Which means I'll get in trouble. So no, you won't get in trouble. I'll get in trouble.
Okay. Effing magnets, how do they work? Thank you, Bakery. Google interdimensional settlement.
Cookie's right. Says, Gish, who thinks God invented physics, uses physics to claim God didn't use physics. He couldn't say He could have saved hours by just saying, God did physics. Shrug. Yeah, that would have been faster. Basically, this just comes down to, look at the trees, except it's, look at the planets. You don't think that could have just happened, do you? Like,
Cat T in the chat says the power of flex tape.
All right.
The
And yeah,
beginning of
Icarus,
their
if-
problem.
I don't know. I was gonna say if you guys don't know what reference Jewish physics is, I am not explaining it on air, and I am sorry for your search history if you look it up.
Yeah, maybe look it up
I'm
like
sorry.
incognito on a VPN. Just
Yeah.
you know.
There's many other problems. If all of the planets came out of the same cloud of dust and gas, you'd also predict there'd be many similarities as we go from planet to planet.
Planet's different, therefore God.
Wait, is he just gonna not understand what solar wind is?
He's gonna say that, well, all the planets should either be rocky or gaseous, and because we have a mixture of rocky and gaseous planets, but then some of the rocky planets have a real thick atmosphere and some don't have like hardly any, then therefore God.
Yeah, I think he's just gonna ignore solar wind. Okay, well, let's see.
But that's not true of all,
Okay.
at all. Each planet is uniquely different. For example, the planet Venus has a surface temperature of 440 degrees centigrade.
Okay.
The Earth has a surface temperature of less than 20 degrees.
The Earth has systems that take carbon out of the atmosphere and put it into the rocks, which means it has less of a greenhouse effect. Venus doesn't have that. Because Earth has this thing, like, what are they called? They're big, they have green bits at the tips.
Hey, are there trees on Venus?
Oh yeah, trees. Yeah, no, there aren't trees on Venus.
Huh.
Weird. Also, we have things like fossil fuels. That is where a bunch of the carbon from the atmosphere is stored. Which, we've just decided to start putting back into the atmosphere. Because nothing could possibly go wrong.
Mm-mm.
DM scientist, chemist, auto mechanic wing for $5 says at least Gish isn't conflating the nebular hypothesis and the Big Bang. Yeah, he is a step ahead of Kent on that
Yet.
one. Well, okay, yeah, there's that
Jeez.
too. All right.
Furthermore, the atmosphere of the Earth consists of 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. That's 99% of everything. And the other 1% is mainly argon, plus, of course, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide,
Drink, he's getting this roughly right.
water vapor, and things like that. The atmosphere of Venus consists of almost all carbon dioxide.
So he's once again forgetting about plants. Just plants broadly.
Again, hey Dapper, are there trees on Venus?
No, there's also no algae, grass, ferns, vine. There's just no, photosynthesizers on Venus at all that we know of. And also, cracked macranium.
Venus is not verdant at all.
No. Cracked macranium 4 has just joined the channel at the tetrapod level. Thank you very much, everyone. Send sessile tunicats and tetrapods, please. No, that's the wrong tunicate. Come on, Vishanti. Why do I even let you on here?
Because I'm funny.
All right, that's a good point.
Plus some carbon, plus some sulfuric acid, the strongest acid we have. Can you imagine a worse place to be?
Is sulfuric acid the strongest acid we have?
I don't even know how to answer that, right? Like, how are you measuring the strength of the acid?
Yeah, I'm like, what are you trying to dissolve?
I mean, I wouldn't want to get it on me, but then again, there are acids that would be worse to get on me, so I don't know. Like,
hydrochloric acid's pretty bad.
Yeah. So it's not fun. It's not like safe. Don't play with sulfuric acid.
440 degrees centigrade with that acid floating around in the atmosphere. I'll tell you, nothing lasts very long on that surface. Terrible. So totally different from the Earth.
Remember back in the 90s when acid rain was a big concern?
Mm-hmm.
We fixed it.
We did. Yeah. It was one of the two most effective ecological global initiatives ever. The other one was the one that got rid of the CFCs that were killing the ozone layer.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that used to be in hairspray.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why we don't have those 80s style haircuts anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Because, no. I mean, I guess we could still use just much, much more of the less effective hairspray. But, no.
And so many other things different there. As I mentioned, Venus is rotating on its axis in the opposite direction that the Earth is rotating.
That's still true.
We see all of these many contradictions.
Okay, so I think that what Dwayne Gish is trying to say is that every single planet, no matter its distance from the sun or anything else, should have the same atmospheric composition. Now, that's dumb for a number of reasons. Let's go over a few of them. One, there's this thing called solar wind. Now, solar wind is made primarily of various massive particles coming off of the sun in the form of things like beta particles, protons, things like that, right? Even photons can actually still add to the solar wind because they do impart momentum onto particles that they strike. Now, the solar wind, just like light from the sun, which is also a component of the solar wind, is governed by the inverse square law, right? The way I like to explain the inverse square law is imagine all of the particles from the solar wind emitting from the surface of the sun at an instant in time, right? And there's a certain number of them, and they have a certain flux, which is the number of them per unit area, right? So we're going to imagine that sphere of all the particles emitted at an instant of time. Now, if you double the radius of that sphere as they move away from the sun, so we keep the same particles, we're tracking the same particles, but they now doubled their radius. Well, what's going to happen to the flux? It's going to have to increase, not doubling, but the square of that change. It's going to have to quadruple, right? Because now each particle, or each set of particles, is stretched over 4 times as much area. Okay, so what that means is that as long as we treat the sun as a point source, which is reasonable for the planets, if you double your distance from the sun, you cut into a quarter the strength of the solar wind. Now, less massive particles are more heavily affected by the solar wind because the less massive you are, the easier it is to accelerate you. So when, say, a proton strikes, say, a hydrogen atom, which is basically just a proton and an electron, which means it weighs almost exactly the same as the proton in the first place, that's going to impart a lot more change in velocity. There's going to be a lot more acceleration to that hydrogen atom than if it struck, say, an iron atom, or a carbon atom, or an oxygen atom. Which means that the lighter an atom is, the more likely it is to be blown out towards the outer solar system. That's why hydrogen is abundant in the outer solar system, but it's vanishingly rare here in the inner solar system. That's why Earth's atmosphere contains virtually no hydrogen, because any hydrogen that gets into the Earth's atmosphere is going to eventually leak away to space, because the solar wind is too strong here on Earth, even with the Van Allen radiation belts and the geomagnetic field helping shield Earth from the heaviest of the solar wind. Now, other planets that have less, geomagnetism, which would include, as far as we know, Venus and definitely Mercury, have even less shielding. So the fact that there's a difference in the composition of the atmosphere as you go away from the sun is predicted. And we got a couple super chats. Turkey Sloth attempts to send a Godzilla meme, so we'll drink for it anyway. So Godzilla irradiates Gish for apparently not understanding nukes. Yeah, no, he doesn't understand anything as far as I can tell. Goopdo3 for $2 says AIG is a blank ag of blank ix. Oh, and it's B and D. You get the answer key right there. Thank you very much. That comes out to a bag of dicks. We'll take a drink. So, and of course, there's one other thing, which is that Earth used to have an atmosphere much more like Venus's before the Great Oxidation Event, in which photosynthesizers started to dominate Earth's ecology and switched Earth from having virtually no free diatomic oxygen in the atmosphere to having somewhere around modern levels, where it's roughly 20%. And during some parts of Earth's history, like the Carboniferous, it was significantly higher than that. And the big difference is photosynthetic organisms that take carbon dioxide in, break it up into carbon and diatomic oxygen, use some, but not all of that oxygen for metabolic purposes, but then use the carbon to physically build their own cells. the carbon that makes up a tree, which is most of its mass, most of its dry mass. That's from the air primarily. It didn't eat a bunch of food to get that carbon like you do. It took in carbon dioxide from the air.
This is the segment of Bill Wirtz's video where he goes, "Can I go on land yet?" "No. The sun is a deadly laser." And then 2 seconds later goes, "Not anymore. There's a blanket." And that's oxygen because of the ozone layer. And then it's, "Now you can eat sunlight."
Yep. Which apparently is just something that Dwayne hasn't heard of. Also, we're getting dangerously close to a Bilbo, so I don't know.
Contradictory to the theory of evolution. This is the so-called...
Look, I gotta say it once an episode, right? This has nothing to do with the theory of evolution.
Mm-mm.
Not a little bit. And hey,
not even a little.
It's Mars, one of my favorites.
Mysterious planet of Mars. Not quite so mysterious today. Many years ago...
I mean, it was more mysterious before he gave this talk, I guess.
Thank you, Meldeborn.
Lowell, as astronomer, believed that he could see canals on Mars. And so he said, well, there's...
Canali was trenches or whatever, and people thought that anyway.
Well, he did hypothesize that they might actually be irrigation canals. But he didn't know. And he didn't claim they were that. He just thought they were artificial channels.
Intelligent life there, similar to what we have on the Earth. Well, when they got better telescopes and able to take a closer look, of course, they discovered there's no canals there at all. Now, we put a spacecraft down on Mars, 2 of them, as a matter of fact.
A lot more since then, but again, we're not going to fault Dwayne for not being a time traveler.
On the surface of Mars...
I hated it when Perseverance's battery started running low and it was getting ready to power off, and the people tweeting from the Twitter account for the Perseverance rover were like, "Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good." I'm like, no!
Yeah.
Stop!
Yeah, that was...
I'm not supposed to have feelings about a machine.
They really worked hard to personalize that machine. Make you feel empathy for it.
You can't get me attached to it and give it a nickname and then tweet that. I'm not okay.
Remember when it was playing Happy Birthday to itself every time its like year anniversary ticked over? It was just there alone on Mars and it would just play Happy Birthday to no one?
No! It's horrible!
So much emotional manipulation.
I know! Jeez.
Trellmix for $5 says, the strongest acid is the one Kent Hovind's parents were on when they conceived him. Oh, that's really good. Alright, here we go.
1976. Now, these spacecraft were equipped to scoop up the soil and test the soil for the existence of life.
That's not actually going to be soil unless there is, in fact, life there. That's one of the things about soil.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so maybe like the sediment, the ground cover, the dust. I don't know. Any of those things would be more appropriate than soil.
Also, they could test the soil for the existence of molecules.
Hold on, no, he's got to have something to say after that. Hold on.
That might contribute to life or be derived.
Okay, there you go. Okay. He was going to say, okay, last time we stopped after he said something
molecules,
stupid like that, he clawed it back a little bit.
Like, boy, do I have news for you.
From living things, such as amino acids and sugars and purines and pyrimidines and things like that.
You think he could define any of those things?
No.
Okay.
So they put this lander down there. And by the way, the evolution is predicted. Most evolution predicted we'd find life on Mars.
I would like a citation for that, because I am pretty sure that by the time that the first rover touched down on Mars, it was pretty well known to almost certainly not have any actual surface water and to have a very thin atmosphere, making it a very unlikely habitat for life.
But when the comet came through the solar system that caused the flood, some of that water got trapped on Mars's ice cap.
The comet that caused the flood and froze all the mammoths somehow?
Couldn't get the...
Oh my goodness.
Kent Hovind believes this crap. Like, he said that there was a comet that came through the solar system to, like, knock down the canopy of water and cause the flood. And because ice is magnetic at, like, low temperatures, that's why it went to the poles. That's why Mars has a giant gash in it, because, like, the comet scraped a huge gash in Mars, and then some of the ice crystals got
Ugh,
stuck on the poles.
I hate everything about that. Also, Mark A. Smith, who's been a member for 9 months and is at the tetrapod level, says, "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't allow that." Which is excellent. 2001.
Daisy.
Hey, that sounds a lot like my last yodeling montage if you were getting early access. If you're not getting early access, you're missing out on like 5 months worth of Dapper Dino content right now.
The spooky stuff is really cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I did a 4-part spooky series for October, but it only works if you have early access as far as being in October. Otherwise, it's going to be like a spooky like March or something series.
But I mean, I'm biased as to the 2 costumes that your dinosaur is wearing.
Yes, I'm aware. Yes, I know which one you vastly prefer, but that is mostly, I think, that level of preference, I think, is mostly just a you thing. All right. For $2, DM scientist Chemist Auto Mechanic Wing says, "Why does the flood need a natural explanation?"
Natural explanation, Kent.
Yeah. So I'll tell you why. Right. I think I understand why. Creationists understand that people find well-evident science to be more convincing than faith-based religious doctrine. As a result, they want to maximally ground their faith-based religious doctrine in science. And so they want to try to steer away from as much supernatural explanation as possible. They want to have the minimum in there. They need to get the absolute required bits, right? Like, God has to exist. He has to have created the universe. But they want as little surrounding that to be magical as possible, because then it seems more plausible. And if they can find scientific evidence for it, or at least scientific things that they can twist into evidence, then that's all the better. Heather Kuhn says, maybe regolith would be better than soil. Yeah, so I don't actually know what the exact definition for regolith is, and I was thinking about that. And because I don't actually know if it counts, I wasn't going to say that. But yeah, I do think it would probably be at least better than soil. Cookies Riot says, request Vishanti Yodel for $2. You gonna yodel for us?
For $2, I'll give you yoda doody.
All right, there you go. That was $2 worth of yodeling.
That's $2 worth of yodeling.
Yeah, those Vishanti concert tickets are pretty expensive.
Yeah.
All right.
Get them while they're hot, folks.
Why not, they said. We have life on the earth. Life has evolved here. They said Mars has an atmosphere. Indeed, it does. It's a thin atmosphere, but it has an atmosphere.
I hate the way that he pauses right after stopping at would be a stupid point. And then he has like a half-second pause before he concludes with a thing that makes it fairly reasonable.
This is why I get tired of Vish, because he's speaking so slowly that I can't remember what his original point is.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Jillian, the entire column is igneous, Ryan, says Wikipedia confirms regolith. Okay, so there you go. Martian regolith is it. Yeah, I wasn't sure, so that's why I didn't say it. But yeah, apparently that is accurate. Regolith. All right, here's what we're going to do.
Talking about all this has got that Rob Zombie song stuck in my head. Mars needs women, angry red women.
All right, we are going to take a break here. We're going to come back. I'm going to freshen this beverage here. It ran out of ice. Can you believe that? And then we're going to come back. I'll give a quick little commercial, and then we will continue on with Dwayne Gish. So please enjoy the musical stylings of Beethoven. We are back. Welcome back, everyone. I see that pretty much everyone stayed with us. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. Hit like if you haven't. Vishanti, welcome back. Did you have a good break?
Yep.
Good
A
to
new
hear.
shipment of KN95 masks. It'd still be COVID.
Yep.
And I'm more likely to wear the mask when they're in nifty colors, so yeah.
That makes sense. We have a $2 super chat from Brockton Sorensen who says, so it's 50 cents per syllable, Vishanti? Is that the going rate for yodeling?
I haven't gotten down to individual syllables. I mean,
Okay. So before we get right back into it, I want to say a quick few things. One is that, as I'm sure most of you probably know, this channel is almost entirely supported through the direct financial support of the viewers, whether it be through super chats, super thanks, super stickers, memberships, Patreon, or even just helping with things like my kitchen expenses, like Corey getting me a French press, or my entertainment expenses with like people buying me the occasional book over on my wish list. So if you would like to support the channel and you're currently not doing so, and you want to do that, in a financial way, we have a number of great options. There's a Patreon, it's linked in the description. You can get a 12% discount if you go annually. It starts at only $1 a month. It goes all the way up to you can pledge $100 a month if you're really feeling generous. Pledging at any level will get you early access to all my finished but currently unreleased scripted videos, which, like I said, is currently like 5 months worth of videos. There are hours and hours. I think there's got to be somewhere around like 8 hours worth of Dapper Dino that you can just listen to for $1. Like you could literally pay Patreon $1, binge hours of Dapper Dino, cancel that membership, and there you go. Right? Like you could just do that.
yeah, but don't do that. It's worth it.
I think it's worth it
Because then you can hang out in the Discord with cool people.
Yep, you get access to a special Discord that's only for supporters. Now, there's also the YouTube memberships that starts at $1.99, and I think the highest it goes to $20. There's a join button below this video. You can join there. That'll get you not only access to all those things, it'll also give you access to the channel emojis. There's also gifting memberships. If you have a membership, but you want to spread that out and help other people get memberships, and you can always, gift them memberships. We also drink for that, so there is that added incentive. If you really want me to get drunk, that is probably the fastest way to do it, is to just buy a bunch of memberships. But if like a monthly or an annual thing isn't your thing, there's also a merch store. Someone recently purchased a Dapper Dino baby onesie. So somewhere out there's a little baby wearing a Dapper Dino onesie, and I like that. There's also, we've got t-shirts, blankets, bugs, stickers, pillows, all sorts of stuff. I've actually got a phone case that I got from my merch store on my phone right now. Oh, and hey, look at that. Vishanti just gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. I don't know who it went to yet, but we'll take a drink for it.
Yeah!
Who'd it go to? Jillian, the entire
I was
column
hoping
is
it went to Jillian.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations, Jillian. There's also no, I think that covers it. Yeah, the Amazon wishlist is also linked in the description if you want to get me a book or a new monitor because mine is starting to die, or something like that. That's also there. And if none of that's right for you, if financial support is just something you can't do or you don't want to, that is okay. Please hit like and share these videos, because guys,
log into your favorite social media platform, and copy the link to this video and hit post.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, whatever. Just do that, right? Because quite frankly, it's a little disheartening when I get 5,000 individual people watching my videos every week, and I get fewer than 40 shares every week. Sometimes as low as 18 in a given week. And it's just like, guys, help me out a little bit with that one. You don't have to send it to anyone in particular. Just post it on your timeline. All right, or feed, or whatever we're calling them now. All right, here we go.
We got all that energy coming from the sun. They say that's all you need.
No one has ever said that all you need is energy coming from the sun. What? I'm taking a drink. I just can't with this guy. You need things like, the right amount of energy. the right types of energy, like the right wavelengths and whatnot. You need the right energy flux. You need the right chemistry in the physical substrate which this energy is hitting. You need the right kinds of atmospheric composition. There's a lot of things that you need besides just, well, there's enough energy.
I mean, Mercury gets a lot of the sun's energy, and, well, look at the state it's in.
Yeah, I don't know of anyone who's ever predicted life on Mercury, even though it's getting plenty of energy from the sun.
Yeah.
Oh, also, I do want to say thank you. I recently had a push to get myself to 100 patrons on Patreon, and now I'm at, I think, like 114 currently active patrons. So I do really appreciate that. Because, yeah, as you guys know, some things about the housing situation here have changed, and it resulted in a bit of a extra financial burden. I don't want to go too deeply into that because it involves someone
None of our business.
Yeah, it involves someone who's not very public facing. So I don't want to take that person and put their, business out there. But yeah, so as a result, there has been some tightening of the belt around here.
Fact is, Carl,
When you wear pants, did they go like over just like your legs and your tail, or is it like just your legs?
They cinch anterior to my hips, right? That's where they cinch, but there's a hole for the tail, and I put my legs through them.
Ow.
I don't know.
Because I'm imagining, like, how do you wiggle your tail in first and then squish your legs? How do you do that with your tiny arms?
There's a second zipper at the back. So I put one leg in, the other leg in, then I zipper up so that the tail is covered, and then I have a belt. And I don't do all that.
Okay, but how do you do that with your really short arms?
Butler.
Ah.
Yeah, plus I don't usually wear pants. As you can see.
Sagan said, now,
Sagan. Carl Sagan. Okay.
we have these spacecraft equipped to scoop up the soil to test for microscopic organisms. Maybe there's something big walking around there, and this test would not detect those forms of life. So they put a video camera on their lander. Well, they landed on the surface of Mars. They tested. They didn't see anything walking around, by the way.
Which they didn't expect to, but okay. You know what? I'll take a drink. It's true. They didn't see anything walking around. Those rock crabs are just too sneaky.
They tested the soil
Mars
for the
has
existence.
rock crabs?
Yeah, you're not aware of this?
I only knew about the moon rock crabs.
Oh no, Mars has its own rock crabs. I'll have to educate you on that later.
Okay.
Of life, living
Is that
organisms.
where Earth red crabs came from?
I don't know.
Like the red color is just a nod to their ancient past.
Well, most crabs actually aren't red until after they're cooked. So, yeah.
Absolutely not a trace. They tested the soil for the existence of these molecules that might have contributed to life or be derived from a living thing. Not a single molecule was discovered.
Hey, here's a cool thing. Did you know that the absence of life in one place doesn't actually mean anything for how life in another place got to be how it is now? That's just a fun little thing right there. Goop23 for $2 says, Does Carl Sagan does what Nintendo?
Carl Sagan.
Oh, Sagan. Oh,
does what
Sagan.
Nintendo don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm gonna go with yes on that one.
In other words,
Saved a grave, feathers equal bird. Says Mars rock crabs evolve into rock lobsters with a Mars stone.
they found nothing. Now, they predicted they'd find life on Mars. The creation said, no, you will not find life on Mars. Their predictions were falsified.
All right. You know what? Let's check something. Okay, so was Sojourner expected to find life on Mars? Because I don't actually know. This is from NASA. Oh, pelagic tunicate. Let's see. Flash Tunic did it has best explanatory power for €5 says, maybe there are weeping angels on Mars. That is why we don't see anyone walking. Yeah, that could be it too. Let's see. This is not very useful, NASA. Okay, Spirit and Opportunity rovers that followed were in many ways based on Sojourner. They found evidence that Mars was once awash with liquid water, but nothing about Sojourner expecting to find life. So I can't find anything so far about Sojourner being expected to find life. Let's double check Wikipedia. Let's search for life. Half-life. Nope, that's not it. Nothing about finding life on the Wikipedia page for the entire Sojourner. Wait, let's see. This is astronomy. It's life. What? Nope, that's a life-size model of Sojourner. Okay, well, that's not it. Yeah, I'm going to need a citation for scientists were expecting to find life on Mars with Sojourner.
Past life, maybe, but
you know,
yeah, that might have been a possibility. Like maybe they could find fossils or just chemical remnants that there could have been a biosphere.
when I saw that first picture came back from the surface of Mars,
Living pterodactyl immurament, therefore squawkney. Don't you get VIP access as a NASA shield? No, I'm a USGS shield. That's the thing. I don't debunk the flat Earth, so I don't get the NASA shield money. I have to settle for the USGS, United States Geological Survey. It's not nearly as good, which is saying something given how crappy NASA shield money usually is.
I knew immediately there was no life on Mars.
By the way, yeah, I do have a Luma key on this, so it's harder to see what this is. But even if you weren't seeing this through a Luma key, it's just an incomprehensible bunch of pixels. There's nothing discernible in this picture. I know it happens to be Mars because of the context, but yeah, this is atrocious.
Well, if there'd been life up there, I mean, if there'd been life up there, there'd be a great big sign saying, "Yankee, go home." Well,
was that a neo-Confederate joke?
Joke that didn't land, yeah. That
Yeah.
was a neo-Confederate joke, and it didn't land.
Yeah, let's take a drink for that.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I'm surprised that Dwayne Gish had neo-Confederate sympathies, but I'm not. That seems like, yeah, okay, yeah. Gish probably does think that the South will rise again.
Yeah.
Not really surprising there. Tiktaalik, who's been a member for 18 months, is at the amniote level, says, are there giant ladybug cows native to Mars? Not that I'm aware of, but then again, the native Martians were driven underground after the Great Calamity, so maybe in those subterranean caverns. Astoryu says, Astoryu means star dinosaur in Chinese. For $4.99 says, technically aren't all our super chats USGS shield money since you make videos where you shield for the USGS? Kind of, right? So it's like a side income after the USGS money. The USGS actually comes in from like with checks from USGS, right? And then I also get this money, and like it's connected. It's like a separate income stream, you know. Unfortunately, I don't have to pay money on the USGS money because, or taxes, I mean, because that's all like secret hush hush government money. That's part of their like black budget, you know, black box budget. No one knows where that goes. Now you know. It goes to me. Well, a tiny little bit of it does. Anyway, DM, scientist, chemist, auto mechanic wing for $5 says, if there were rocks on the moon, they'd be landing on your head. There are rocks on the moon, though. The ice warriors, yeah, that might also be a real thing. You never know. There might be ice warriors. Although exactly whether or not the ice warriors still live on Mars seems to be something that kind of goes back and forth in Doctor Who. Like, they're always from Mars, but are they still there? That seems to be a little iffy in a lot of Doctor Who. Like, especially if you look at the earlier serials, it seems like they abandoned Mars, and now they have their own, like, interstellar empire elsewhere. But then in later Doctor Who, it seems like you can still find ice warriors, like, preserved under the Martian surface. I don't know, it gets complicated. Also, Doctor Who has a very loose idea of, like, canonicity. So, you know.
our tests were somewhat more sophisticated than that, but we found absolutely no trace of life on Mars. Now, I know you've all heard or read about that meteorite they found on Mars. National Aeronautics.
You mean from Mars?
They
There?
didn't find it on Mars. Oh my god, it was found on Earth. Weirdo.
Yeah, on Earth from Mars. Tiktaalik for 100 Argentinian peso says, giant Martian ladybug cows were created by the great man in the sky. I mean, it's at least as likely as any other explanation, right?
Space Administration scientists said they found a meteorite down there on Mars.
No, on Earth.
And that meteorite, according to these people, was it was from Mars.
Right, from.
It was 3.8. It was from Mars.
We'll just take a drink for
Dude,
Dwayne can't finish a sentence.
Complete a coherent sentence. Jeez.
That would assume that he has coherent thoughts that can be put into a sentence.
I know it's just like a quirk of mine, but a pet peeve is when people begin a sentence and then almost all the way to the point, they immediately stop and change to a different sentence. Like, just complete the thought.
Like 30% of all dialogue lines in the show From?
Been knocked off of Mars somehow, they claimed. Been in orbit for 15.
I like how he says, somehow, as if it's not obvious that there was an impact that created ejecta that shot rocks off of Mars. Like, it's pretty...
No, that can't happen.
Like, you look at Mars, and you don't feel like it has a particular lack of craters. It's not as cratery as, say, the moon, but, like, it's not like it's just devoid of a crater, including huge craters. There are gigantic craters. There are craters, like, the size of Texas out there. I say Texas, because, you know, everything's bigger in Texas. Even the toast. Even the toast is bigger in Texas.
Yeah, even the toast. I love Texas toast.
Man, it's the best bread for making French toast, despite being from Texas.
Oh, well, that and challah.
Okay. But, like,
they both make ballin' good,
but,
French
like,
toast.
my default for I'm going to make good French toast is, like, Texas toast, let it dry for a bit, right? Maybe even put it in the oven on, like, the lowest setting for an hour or two so it dries out completely. Then you put it in the egg, because then the egg really soaks in. And then you put it on the pan. That's how you do that. Don't just put fresh Texas toast that hasn't been dried out. You don't even have to don't even toast it, actually, right? Get, like, the loaf that you're going to turn into Texas toast. Don't toast it. Just put it in the oven on the lowest setting until it's, like, really dry. Then soak it in eggs. This has been cooking with Dapper.
15 million years. And it was, oh, by the way, it was 3.8 billion years old, they said.
I actually don't know how they dated that asteroid. I've never looked into it. I would be interested to know. So I'm not going to defend that date if Dwayne, like, is like, oh, how do they know? I don't know how they know. Maybe they're wrong about that. I just don't know.
After it got knocked off of Mars, it was in orbit for 15 million years and had been lying down there in Antarctica for 13,000 years.
Martian crater. I'm as big as Texas. Caloris planitia. Hold my magma. Says Asteriu means star dinosaur in Chinese for $4.99. Yeah. Oh, and Eddie McCoy gifted a Dapper Dinosaur membership. So let's take a drink for that. Thank you very much, Eddie.
With an aquatic murder horse as their avatar.
Yes. Although it's really more of a murder cow. Despite the name.
Murder cow, yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
murder cow.
They are artiodactyls. And that went to Michael Narum? I'm going to go with Narum. Narum? I don't know how to say your last name, Michael. Please let me know, because I would prefer to pronounce it correctly. If you can use the International Phonetic Alphabet, that would be greatly appreciated. But I know most people can't.
Well, it must have had a little notebook attached to it saying, I'm 3.8 billion years old. I was in orbit for 15 million years. I've been down here for 13,000 years. Where have you been? How could they know that? I mean, if they...
Oh, and also, Zerolon just joined the channel at the Tetrapod level. Welcome, Zerolon.
Yeah. Get them pelagic tunicates in.
Or sessile tunicates. You know, that works too. I want those
or
sessile
fwings.
Or you know, fwings are pretty good. I do like the fwings.
They had a valid method for dating something. Let's assume that it was a valid method. They got some valid...
What, like Tinder? It's a valid method.
Right.
They still have like those dating websites. There's like a special website. It's not just an app.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do. I don't know.
Yeah. Probably.
Those count. Or just go into the bar, right? Go to the bar, find a nice asteroid, strike up a
Yeah, I dated
conversation.
an asteroid once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're not that bad.
A method for dating something like that. If an asteroid had struck Mars and knocked that off of there, it got to such a high temperature. First of all, just been vaporized, but
dude, you're not saying sentences. What do you? It would have reached. It reached such a high temperature. First of all, it would have been vaporized. That's not a sentence, dude. Do you know? Does he not have notes?
Just thoughts bouncing around in his head like a pinball machine, man. And occasionally one just goes down into the, between the paddles. Like, man, I can't.
Nayrum. Michael Nayrum says it's Nayrum. Okay, thank you very much. I will try to remember that. If I don't, please correct me again. Because, I mean, I do have a few thousand subscribers. I'm not going to remember all of their names. But I will try to remember how to pronounce that, especially while you are a member. Because I feel like it's more important while you're a member. Because, hey, I have to participate in capitalism in order to survive. So, Strawberry Bane for $5 says, somehow, the creationist's favorite word for I don't understand science, somehow, the creationist's favorite word for I don't understand science and I have to protect my kids from understanding it. Yeah, that's a line straight out of the Dr. Banjo bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand science and I have to protect my kids from understanding it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
At least it got at such a high temperature that all the volatiles would have been knocked or given out. And
yeah, all the
knocked
volatiles.
or given it.
Okay, but what are volatiles?
Talking about?
Volatiles are things like water, ammonia, carbon dioxide, right? These are the volatiles. Do you think that that's what the asteroid was made of, Dwayne? Because it's not. It was mostly made of silicates, which is why they knew it wasn't just, any other meteorite, because those are usually made of things like what we would normally think of as like volcanic igneous rocks, because they directly cooled from molten things like iron and other metals usually.
Okay.
Whereas
So Nee wins the comment for today. He says, the only sentences that Yex complete are behind bars.
Ooh. Okay.
That was brutal.
Oh man, poor Kent. Poor Kent, who might be going back to prison if his conviction is upheld.
Oh no.
Yeah, which I hope it is. As for you mean Star Dinosaur in Chinese for $4.99 says, AIG tried to date rocks. They were not impressed at seeing what they were a bag of. Oh, we'll take a drink.
I'm gonna be using that line, Nee. I can't. That's too funny.
And if all the other things have been scrambled up, there's been no way to date something like that, even if you could date.
Okay, but
what is scrambled up, Dwayne? Why is this a thing that you think?
Yeah, I don't know, because if they radiometrically dated it, right, they would be sampling the interior of the crystalline matrix of the rock. So yeah, I don't know.
Scrambled up. What is he even doing?
Things that old. How would they know it's been in orbit for 15 million years? I had to make a lot of assumptions about that.
So here's the thing. I don't know how they made that determination because I've never looked into this because it's never come up before because creationists don't usually talk about it, which means I probably haven't looked it up before because it's not of independent interest to me, right? Like I look up a lot of stuff about dinosaurs because I'm curious. You might be surprised, but I don't actually look up a lot of things about interplanetary asteroids. Sorry. Just not a normal thing for me to look up. But here's the thing, Dwayne. If you want me to say that, yes, I believe you that all the experts were just making crap up because they wanted to fit it into their evolutionary dogma, what you're going to need to do is do more than just say, well, I don't see how that could happen. Because that's this thing that we call an argument from...
incredulity.
Yes, it is. And
argument from nuh-uh.
Yeah, basically. And so here's the thing about arguments from incredulity. They're fallacious, Dwayne. The fact that you can't believe it doesn't tell me anything about how plausible it is, especially since I don't take you as someone who is particularly intelligent that your inability to understand something should mean that it is confusing for me, right? Because while it's always fallacious, there's a heuristic that you can have, right? Where, hey, this other guy's really smart compared to me. He can't figure this out. Maybe it doesn't make sense. Technically, that's fallacious, but like, it might work in more cases than not as like a heuristic device for figuring out which things are nonsense and which aren't. But I still can't even go there because he's not even smart enough for me to use such a heuristic reliably. Kent, no relation, Halstead for 628. Wait, is your name actually Kent? That would be great. The only science conspiracy here is Gish's hair. I feel like that's a toupee. I have a sneaking suspicion that that's a toupee. But then again, I would have said that about Trump. But I've seen plenty of pictures of Trump's hair being blown up in the wind and actually being attached. Yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just bad at picking out toupees.
I mean, it doesn't look like a toupee to me, but what do I know?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just being mean? Is that mean? Is it mean to say someone's wearing a toupee?
I mean, I don't think so, but also I'm petty, so.
Okay. Oh, right. Train of thought. Right. So, Dwayne, what you want to do to convince me that this doesn't work, right, is tell me, how did they date this thing? Where did they publish these results? What are the problems with them? What methodological errors did they make? What unfounded assumptions did they make? You can't just say, well, they made a lot of assumptions. Leave it at that. Because here's the thing, Dwayne. I'm speaking to Dwayne as if he would ever listen and as if he's still alive to listen. Okay, so here's the thing, creationists, and anyone else, right? If you want to tell me that the experts who spend their entire lives doing something got it wrong, you're going to have to do more than just say, nah, I ain't buying it. You're going to actually have to tell me what they got wrong and how you know they got it wrong.
How would they know it's been down in Antarctica for 13,000 years?
That's where they found it, Dwayne.
Yeah, probably because of what it was buried under.
God.
It was probably under 13,000 years worth of ice, Dwayne. That would be my guess. Yep, because here's this cool thing. We don't only get ice cores from Iceland. We also get them from Antarctica. And we can do similar ice core dating.
We get them from a lot of places.
Yeah, we can do similar ice core dating.
What sort of data led them to that conclusion?
DM scientist, chemist, automechanic wing says he's listening from heaven because he chose the right Christianity. Well, look, if there's a right Christianity, it's definitely not Dwayne Gish's. Also, what about apokatastasis? Where you don't need to choose the right version of Christianity. There's a Christian doctrine for you.
But they made this announcement.
You don't know about apokatastasis? Oh, that is the Christian idea that anyone may be saved and that salvation can be achieved after one's mortal life. And that the option for salvation is open to anyone and not just exclusively people who become the right kind of Christian during their lifetime.
Sounds a little too Mormon-y for me.
I mean, it predates the Mormon Church by like 1,600 years, but okay. Actually, no, not quite 16.
I mean, I didn't
like
say
14.
It was Mormon-y. I just said it sounds Mormon-y because they, do proxy baptism so that people who were dead will have a chance to receive the gospel.
Well, historical apokatastasis does not normally involve baptisms for posthumous baptisms.
Didn't say that. Just said it sounds Mormon-y. That's it.
Fair.
This sensational announcement. And I remember driving home that evening, and I heard Dan Rather on CBS radio excitingly telling about this great
Dan Rather
discovery.
Outlived him.
Lots of people did.
I got home that night, I turned on CBS Evening News on the television. Here he was again.
CBS
this tremendously
Evening News. Dude, freaking A.
exciting discovery. How dramatic it was.
Get to the point, dude. No one cares about your anecdote.
Get on with it.
Seriously.
And the newspapers,
You know, that's a new drink trigger for Dwayne, is get to the point.
Yeah, get on with it.
Jeez.
on the front page of newspapers all around the world was a sensational announcement.
I mean, he's just going to be like, we turned on CBS, which was the dial at the time.
Now, in my days, TVs had rabbit ears on them, and you had to twist them just so to get a good signal. So I got up and I twisted those rabbit ears, and then my dad came downstairs and said, "Son, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm twisting the rabbit ears, Dad, because of Dan Rather. He's on the TV." Okay.
Well, I followed that very carefully in the scientific literature ever since.
I guarantee you that when
How is that
Dwayne
the
Gish,
conclusion to the story?
I don't know. I guarantee you that when he says he followed the scientific literature, he means he read National Geographic. That's what he thinks following the scientific literature is. Whispers demon oppressed danger noodles. Daz says for $5, silly Antarctic ice cores don't even contain bears. Mothra. Take a drink for Mothra. It's true. By definition, Antarctic ice cores can't contain bears because then they would be Arctic, because Arctic is the bear place and Antarctic is the no bear place.
Yeah. No, you find anti-bears.
Oh, they're like negative bears. If you have a bear and an anti-bear meet, do they like annihilate each other?
See?
Creating a zero bear?
You did see Annihilation, right?
Well, was that an anti-bear and a bear that meet? Because I thought that was just a bear that ate some
I mean,
humans and
look,
absorbed
I'm
human
just
DNA.
saying, whatever that thing was that looked sort of like a bear didn't sound like a bear.
It did sometimes. But it also sound like moaning and screaming people. Man, that movie...
That was great.
It's a great movie. And here's the thing that annoys me, right? Is that it released the same year as the Ghostbusters remake. It was not a very good movie. And people were like, "Oh man, look, we finally get a female-led sci-fi movie and it kind of sucks." I'm like, yeah, but there's this other one that's also a female-led sci-fi movie that you're not going to see, and it's excellent. You could just go see Annihilation. If you want an excellent female-led, it's actually an almost all-female cast, right? There's like one main male character, and he's barely in the movie anyway.
And it's Oscar Isaac, so that's a bonus.
Go watch Annihilation. Don't watch Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
Well, the 2016 Ghostbusters.
I thought it was all right.
I always compare it to the original, and it's just not even a close comparison.
Look, I have 2 different special collector's editions of the original Ghostbusters. I also was like, yeah, this is pretty funny. All right.
Fair enough.
It wasn't the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, there's a lot of people
that.
out there who are like, "Oh, it's not terrible. It's just so terrible." I'm like, okay, whatever. It doesn't have to be the best movie ever. I was entertained anyway. Have you seen the Vine that came out about the female Ghostbusters where the guy's like, "A female-led Ghostbusters movie. Do. I'm an adult virgin."
Yes, I have seen that one, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't like it very much. Oh well. I actually haven't seen Ghostbusters Afterlife there, Icarus. I probably should.
We should watch that.
Was it good?
Yeah. I don't know. That's why I said we should watch it.
Okay, let's do that.
And the total consensus of scientists who have examined that meteorite since that time, independent of NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
NASA. Are you British now, Gish? NASA?
It's NASA, but even they say NASA.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Pibblepunk the Apistivist with an ape-istivist says for $5, the ferry cost a nickel. Now, in those days, nickels had bumblebees on them. Give me 5 bees for a quarter, you'd say. Thank you.
Yes.
It is one of my favorite ever Simpsons clips. It's great. Like, that's right up there with.
I appreciate that you get so much usage out of it. It's just so
it comes up
appropriate.
so much.
Keep rambling.
They just ramble, and I'm just like, why are you doing this? Though I did just go on a rant about like female-led sci-fi movies and how great Annihilation is. So,
female-led Ghostbusters. I'm an adult virgin.
None of my complaints about that movie focus on the gender of the main cast. None of them.
Oh god, I can't. Every time I hear somebody critique that movie, I think of that Vine.
My problems with that movie are
doesn't even matter what they're complaining about. If they're like, "Oh, the ghost didn't look good," I'll be like, "Okay," and then I still hear that in my head.
My biggest complaint about that movie is actually the pacing, and not in the overall structure, but in like the scene, like the shot-to-shot pacing, where like a joke is never let to just rest with you. There always have to be saying something. There has to be another line. Someone has to say something. Like If you watch the original
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, you would have time for a joke to land, and then for you to
Yep.
laugh, and for the cast to feel a little bit awkward about the situation, and then they would move on. And a lot of the jokes were just sight gags and not just constant talking, because all the director wanted anyone to
Uh,
do was just nonstop improv for 4 hours.
yeah, this is this is like one of those things where there's definitely a stylistic shift in the way that we make comedies now. And for the most part, I don't normally find a lot of the modern comedy funny because of the way that it's done now. Where jokes don't land and they have to be like really super obvious, and a character has to be like, "Well, that happened." Like it doesn't
Yeah.
really get me. But I mean, it's because I grew up on a completely different style of comedy, so that's
Same.
probably what I prefer. And
Strong.
even though I grew up on like Ace Ventura and like the heyday of Jim Carrey movies, which have a lot of slapstick in them, I'm not a fan of slapstick, so it's one of those like.
Actually, Jim Carrey was never one of
Yeah.
my favorite comedians.
Hmm.
Like I liked
He
some
was
of his
hysterical
movies.
on In Living Color. I know his movies could be hit and miss, but
Yeah.
his work on In Living Color was amazing.
Strawberry Main for $20 says, I would say I wish creationists would stop asking questions and leaving them hanging as if there's no answer instead of trying to answer them. But that's how we get 2-inch thick, clear, metallic hydrogen plasma Earth shells. Oh my goodness, yes. That's another reference to the
Yep.
spooky Carl Baugh series. If you want to hear about glowing, optically clear, metallic hydrogen spheres around the Earth, feel free to go join the channel or the Patreon and watch those. My goodness, it is.
Ooh.
If you think Dwayne Gish is bad at astronomy and astrophysics, wait till you hear Carl Baugh.
Oh, it's bad.
It is so bad that most of it doesn't actually form a coherent thought. Like there's not an actual thought there. It's literal nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Scientists around the world in various laboratories that analyzed it and looked at it and so forth and so on. The consensus, I mean overwhelming consensus, was no life in that meteorite. No fossil microscopic organism there at all.
Which you could have started with, Dwayne. The way this should have gone is, you remember the reports of fossils found in a Martian meteorite, right? Instead, you started with, well, there was a asteroid on Mars, which you got wrong because it was from Mars. It was a meteorite. And then you got into some weird ramble about how you found out about it from Dan Rather for some reason, even though Dan Rather is completely irrelevant to all of this.
Just burying the lead there.
And then here at the end is your first mention that there were alleged fossils. Now, it actually looks like they were just geological formations and they were abiotic, which is true. So we'll take a drink for him getting it right. There was, in fact, by consensus, no fossil. Although it's weird that right now he's okay with accepting the consensus of science, whereas before he was like, who cares about the consensus of science? But whatever.
Well, when it agrees with his already determined conclusion, it's fine. But
Oh, right.
if it doesn't, then they're just lying or they don't understand.
I forgot. Yeah, he uses the same argument or the same reasoning as the people who say like, oh, well, Jesus is just a retelling of the horror myth, which is to say you believe literally anything that just confirms your biases.
Yeah. Haha, it makes the Bible look stupid, therefore it's true.
Mm-hmm. Which, hey,
which is a great metric for determining
Yeah.
things that are historical, you know.
equally dumb to what Dwayne Gish is doing right here. So before you ever spread anything about like Easter being based on Ishtar or Jesus just being a retelling of the Horus myth, please stop and think about that. Don't be like Dwayne Gish, but like anti-Bible instead of pro-Bible, because that's not a better stance to take.
Don't get your ideas about history and anthropology and the development of religion off r/atheism.
Hey, you know what? Kip Davis is here. If you think that the Bible is a retelling of the Horus myth, ask him. He'll probably tell you. And the answer is no.
He's studied it for a few minutes.
Yeah, he's brushed up on his Hebrew here and there.
Mm-hmm. He's like,
The chemistry did not indicate it. Nothing indicated that there ever had been any living organism in that
did they do
meteorite.
chemistry on that meteorite?
Did you?
Oh, they must have. I don't actually know, like I don't remember any reports of it, but like you always do chemistry on things like that. You always take it, put it into a mass spectrometer, like put it through various geological tests to see what kinds of mineral it is. I would be absolutely floored if there was no chemistry done on that meteorite. So
see that on the front pages of your newspaper? Was that announcement made on?
Well, okay, it's
That's a weird metric, but all right.
Newspapers, back in the day, sure. But here's the thing. I actually do remember seeing it in science reporting. Because here's the thing. I paid attention to science news. That's all it takes, right? If you just pay attention to science news, then it will show up in the headlines that you pay attention to. So that's why I was aware of things like, oh, hey, they found chemical signatures that on Earth are characteristic of sulfur-eating chemosynthetic bacteria on an exoplanet. Oh, okay, that's a possible life detection on an exoplanet. It's not confirmed, but that's a thing. I paid attention to that. Most people probably didn't. If I ask most of the people whose news is primarily things like what's going on in Maine, or the fact that the new Speaker of the House is an author for Answers in Genesis, they probably don't know about that. So, it just depends on what you read there, Dwayne.
Television, I didn't see anything like that.
Well, I didn't see it, so it didn't exist. We're just
Well, I didn't see it.
That's literally the same thing as like, well, I didn't see anyone being racist, so there must not be any racism. Oh, okay. That's definitely how that works. Cool.
And someone has to tell you outright that they're being racist, or else it's not racist.
Oh, maybe there might have been a little article in the middle of the newspaper somewhere. Of course, we were able to follow that in the scientific journals.
Hey, do you get your scientific, peer-reviewed literature in newspapers?
No, at most, I might hear about a paper that I'm interested in from a news outlet, not a newspaper, but some news outlet, and then I seek out the actual original article. Because the news outlet is usually not going to give me a good view of what's going on.
No, there's no life on Mars, and never has been.
One of those things is true. The other one is currently conjectural.
Citation needed. Yeah, we need some evidence of that.
I'm going to take a half a drink for being half right, and then another half a drink for him being really stupid, which comes out to one full drink. There you go.
Life on Mars. Another strange thing about these people. These evolutionary geologists would deny.
I love how it's evolutionary geologists are apparently dating life on Mars, even though evolutionary geologist isn't a real thing. That's just geology, right?
Oh, evolutionary geologist.
I really hate the trope.
Evolution applies to rocks. All right, man. Sure.
Yeah, I really hate the trope of anything I don't like is evolution. It's not anything better than everyone I don't like is literally Hitler.
Oh, hey, bingo.
Oh, hey, yeah, we've got a few bingos. Nice.
Absolutely, that the Grand Canyon could have formed by a great worldwide flood.
What does that have to do with evolution?
Or Mars, for that matter. He just randomly brought up the Grand Canyon. I'm just taking a drink. I can't.
It's like he can't remember where he was going, so he's like, well, then the Grand Canyon, and you can't form transitional fossils.
It reminds me of every time Matt Powell is talking about some topic, and then he just pivots to be like, and so that's why I don't like trans people. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, all right.
He just took a random opportunity to be a bigoted dick. Cool, thanks. Let's see. Kent, no relation Halstead, for $5 says, I've never seen your brain, Gish. I don't believe it exists. And hey, that was Kent, no relation Halstead's third super chat on the live stream, or on a live stream. So congrats. Although I am now wondering, is YouTube going to start alerting me for
is it going to count
number?
All the number? Yeah,
I've seen it do 1, 3, and 10, which okay, but it's a little weird.
Or massive flooding of any kind. You know how much water we have on the Earth? 350 million cubic miles of water on the Earth.
Okay.
Again with the cubic miles. Cubic miles were the weirdest unit of volume I've ever heard.
Cubic miles. How
much water is there? How much liquid water is there on the surface of Mars? Not
liters.
One drop.
Well, normally, but here's the thing. So we have a Mars Global Surveyor satellite, right? That has a polar orbit around Mars, and it just continually goes and continually maps and gives us updates. Well, from one Martian year to the next, in a particular area, it noticed new gullies on a hillside. And the pictures of the gullies were very consistent with water erosion. And so it is actually possible that in certain parts of Mars, especially low elevation areas, that very, very, very saline water could actually maintain a liquid phase for a few minutes here and there, occasionally. And so it's actually not clear that there's never any liquid water on Mars. However, by and large, it is the case that Mars does not have liquid water on the surface. But that's one of those things that, like, seems like there might be some caveats to that. Now, as far as I know, there hasn't been any follow-up on that Martian gully formation confirming or disconfirming water. But then again, that was a few years ago, and I haven't super kept up. So if anyone has any, newer information about that, please do let me know. But yeah, as far as I know, the answer to is there water on the surface of Mars is almost always no, but not always no. So
Yeah,
there is that.
the chances are low, but it's never zero.
Yep. Also, there's a lot of solid water on the surface of Mars. The core of the Martian ice caps are actually water ice, and what grows during the local winter is actually the dry ice cap. Brockton Sorensen for $5 says, "Does the new speaker really write for the sack of bellends?" Yeah. You can find his picture and bio with listed articles for AIG, and also we're gonna take a drink because they're a sack of bellends. DM Scientist Chemist and Auto Mechanic Wing says, "What's that in cubic bananas?" with a banana superscript 3 bananas cubed. It's what I really want to know what it is in cubic giraffes. That's what I want. Actually, I like to measure radiation in bananas sometimes because that helps people put it in perspective for people, right? Because if I said like, "Oh, hey, you know what? That's 2 millisieverts of radiation," no one knows what a millisievert
I have no
is.
benchmark for that.
Yeah, but if I was like, "Oh, hey, that's like a bunch of bananas worth of radiation," you'd be like, "Oh, I don't really care about that." Yeah, you probably shouldn't.
But there's great canyons and stuff up there that they believe are formed by flooding.
There are runoff channels that form by flooding. The big canyon that everyone talks about on Mars is Valles Marineris, which is a formation that is the result of actually a stress fracture. So the Tharsis Bulge, which is to the west of, southwest, I think, of the Valles Marineris, actually pushed up so strongly as a series of volcanoes that split the crust of Mars at the valley right down. Now, that also seems to have backed up water, which then later spilled into the northern lowlands of Mars, creating channels that come, in some cases, from Valles Marineris. But the valley itself is not an erosional feature. It is, in fact, a feature of the crust just cracking open from internal pressure. Kind of like your chest would if you were attacked by a chest burster. Fun times. Hey, I like the Alien franchise. I gotta find an excuse to play the Alien RPG, which has its own game mode just for like 1 or 2 shot adventures. Like,
neat.
Yeah, like it has its own. It's called a cinematic play, and it has its own set of rules just for cinematic plays. Yeah, which also involves like, characters are gonna die, and here's how you deal with that. Just give the PC control of one of the NPCs, and they become a PC. And also, it gives things like you get like meta currency rewards in the one-shot play that you can carry over to other characters because it might be in your character, like that particular character has their own agenda, and fulfilling it gives you a meta currency reward, even if it kills that character, that you can then use later with your new character. And I just love that. Anyway,
massive
Jillian Wren
floods.
just said, "Hey, I wrote about John Hurt for today." What a good
hey, yeah. Not only was he an alien, he also was one of the actors who portrayed the Doctor from Doctor Who for the shortest period of any actor. Actually, second
He
shortest, I
also
think.
starred in a really great adaptation of George Orwell's 1984.
Oh, yeah. Zerolon, we might have to talk. We might have to talk about that, running or playing some Alien franchise. I don't know if I'm up for running it right now, but I certainly would be okay to play, and I might be up for running it.
Isn't that strange? Not one drop of water up there. 350 million cubic miles down here, but they never believed that the Grand Canyon something like
stupid.
Well, yeah. First, cubic miles is stupid. But so Dwayne, here's the thing, right? There's a lot of water on Mars. A lot of water on Mars, more than enough to create those floods. But it's not currently liquid. And there was that thing that we talked about earlier. I think it was called the solar wind. And
Mm-hmm.
also, Mars, being much smaller than Earth, cooled down much faster, which means it lost its geomagnetic field much sooner. You combine that with the magnetic wind, and that stripped off Mars's earlier, thicker atmosphere, which could have supported significant bodies of liquid water. Now, we know that there were significant bodies of liquid water on Mars because of the spillways and because of waterborne sedimentary rocks that we found. We've actually found waterborne sandstones and things and shale on Mars, which means it had to have had liquid water. So there are no options, creationist or not, for there was never water on Mars. The reason that people are skeptical, and by skeptical I mean basically just completely reject the idea of the worldwide flood of Noah, is that we don't actually have anything that looks like those flood channels that could correspond to a worldwide flood. We've got what, like the scab lands of Washington that cover part of one state in the USA? That's it. I mean, there's not it. There's a few other areas that have similar things, like the area around the Caspian Sea has some similar flood channels from catastrophic flooding, but whatever. Like, there's no evidence of them. There's evidence of non-global but catastrophic flooding on both Mars and Earth, and there's no evidence of global flooding on either. So what do scientists do? They accept that evidence. Sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry, right? It sucks for him, but I don't really care.
Like that could have formed as a result of the Great Flood.
Great, yes. Global, no. That's it. That's all it is.
It's kind of illogical, isn't it?
No, it's not. I'm going to stay and take a drink for it. It's illogical to think that some things are possible and other things didn't happen because of the evidence for them.
Yeah, if one thing happened, all of them happened. Duh.
Yeah. Like Vishanti, did you know that someone drowned yesterday? And yet there are still people who believe that people die of heart attacks. Can you believe it?
I can't believe.
Even though they can see people drowning every day. Weird.
Open your eyes, sheeple.
Well, here we see one of our astronauts sampling the material on the surface
What a loser. Dwayne Gish believes in the moon.
of the moon. You remember what happened when our
Southwest desert.
Yeah, it's a light in the sky. Actually.
astronauts came back from the moon the first time? They kept in quarantine. They were kept isolated for 2 weeks until they could examine the soil of the moon to see if there's some organism there, or organism, some exotic organism.
Yeah,
which is the smart thing to do, man.
Right, they didn't actually expect that to be a problem, but here's the thing, right? It's a better safe than sorry, because what's the worst case scenario for sorry on that one? Oh, just...
global pandemic.
Right.
Oh, wait.
Turns out those are not fun. I know. Firsthand.
Yeah, but, I mean, if you just ignore it and you're just tired of it being a thing, you can just, pretend it doesn't exist, because then it'll stop existing.
Well, you can pretend that it won't exist, but it turns out that will not stop it from existing. Unfortunately.
I mean, surely the people who are in charge of science communication would have told us if it was still a big deal and wouldn't have just, gone back to life as normal.
What I hate most is those and it was a lot of times it was churches, but it wasn't just churches, but venues who were like, no, we don't believe in all this like medicine science, so we're just going to open up and hold meetings. And then they became super spreader events.
What a shock.
Yeah. And it's like, oh no, you mean your faith in Jesus didn't stop the spread of the coronavirus? I can't believe it. It's not like there's a whole history of plagues devastating Christian countries throughout history. I mean, not exclusively Christian countries. They devastate every country. But, like, if your faith in Jesus was going to be the thing that saved you from a plague, you would think that maybe, I don't know, Europe might have a lower history of plague incidents in other parts of the world.
Dapper, what that tells you is that their faith wasn't just strong enough.
Oh, and plus they were
otherwise
Catholics
they wouldn't
for
have
the
gotten
most part.
sick. Yeah.
So they don't really count.
They were the wrong kind of Christians.
Protestants can't get plagues. That's what it is.
Yeah, unless your faith isn't strong enough, and then you get it. So.
Yeah. I was going to say, well, what about the Eastern Orthodox? But then I remembered the plague of Justinian, so clearly they're not the right kind of Christians either. So.
Yep, exactly.
All right, well, now we figured it out, guys. Just become a Protestant, and you'll be immune to plagues. By the way, this is not medical advice, nor is it actual advice at all. That was sarcasm. Please do not actually use medical advice from me. Seek out a doctor. I don't give medical advice.
Get your booster shots and continue to mask because COVID still be out there. So.
All right. We're going to get a little bit more... we'll get a little bit more Dwayne in, then we'll call it.
We should interrupt in mid-sentence and then pick back up, because
Which-
that'll have the same effect.
Yeah.
We would have no defense against it and so forth and so on. What did they find? Those rocks were just as clean as any rocks could be. No trace of any living organism, no trace of any organic material whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the ideal from a quarantine, right? Like when you...
Yeah.
All right, so first, Strawberry Vein for $5 says, but lunar viruses aren't mentioned in the Bible, so we don't have to worry about it, silly. So here's the idea behind quarantine. There's two kinds of quarantine. One is you quarantine an area with an unknown disease to halt the spread of the disease, right? That's what a lot of the lockdowns were that happened worldwide. Didn't really happen in most parts of the U.S., although the Navajo Nation actually did do a real lockdown after getting hit hard by COVID. And I mean, like, there were, like, Navajo Nation police patrolling residences to make sure people weren't violating the lockdown rules. Like, they actually did
But
a
the
real
vast
lockdown.
majority of America never actually had a lockdown.
Yeah, if there weren't cops...
It was, hey, there are essential workers that can still go to work. A lot of places closed because they weren't essential workers, but there were no patrols on the streets to make sure you weren't stepping outside your house. Like, this was not a thing.
At least in most of the country. Because, like I said, there were a few places. And hey, you know what? It worked when it comes to the Navajo Nation. Their transmission rate shot right down. Because, my goodness, they were hit hard.
Yeah.
At first, it was really bad over there. Which I heard all about because, in Arizona, which is where the bulk of the Navajo Nation is. So, anyway. But the other kind of quarantine, right, is when something comes from an area where you don't know what the disease status is, right? So, one of the things you might do is you might say a ship comes in from a far away country, right? And then you say, okay, hey.
And you keep it in the harbor for 40 days before you let people on land.
Why do you say 40 days? What does that have to do with it? Is that like the etymology of the word quarantine?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like that's the etymology. Yeah. So the actual word comes from the practice of keeping foreign ships out in the harbor without letting them actually dock for 40 days to make sure that anyone who had some horrible plague was already dead by the time they got there and the plague had run its course on that ship. And if, hey, that kills everyone on that ship, well, better than killing everyone in the city. Yep. And yeah, you can, like, toss some fresh water to them or food or something. That's okay. But they can't come ashore. That's what was happening here. They were being quarantined on the off chance that they had some disease, not because they knew they would or even expected them to. There was no expectation that they were going to die in there from some horrible moon disease. In fact, if the astronauts had thought that there was a high chance that they would die of some horrible moon disease, they probably wouldn't have agreed to go to the moon. Because, hey, here's a fun fact. Being an astronaut is an optional thing. You don't have to do it. No one's going to kidnap you and say, you're going to the moon.
I mean, look, if somebody didn't want to go to the moon because of the space rock spiders, I completely understand. #LunarTruth.com.
Whispers Demon Oppressed Danger Noodle Daz for $5 says, I work in a hospital and I can confirm COVID do still be out there. Mask up, folks. Stay safe. All right.
Yep.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to start wrapping this up.
I just got more N95 masks in their
Very
really
nice.
cute colors, so.
Now, Vishanti, we have hit the number for the next episode where you wear something interesting.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, what do you want to wear for that? Want to give anyone a preview?
It'll be a surprise.
Okay. But will it be feeders?
I'm leaning towards no.
Okay. So, next week when we do Gish with Vish 9, expect to see Vishanti with another article of clothing that is unusual. But
some
maybe
kind of
not.
accessory that I don't
accessory.
normally. Yeah, it's accessory.
Because
right now I'm just wearing my Costco hot dog shirt from Meth Syndicate, so.
Oh, and Landon Knoll says, hey, Dapper Dinosaur. Very nice. 2.75 times 10 to the 9th, or 2.75 billion adult male giraffes, compacted, would fill a cubic mile. And for those not metrically challenged, 1.31 times 10 to the 9th, 1.31 billion in a cubic kilometer. That's a lot of giraffes.
Okay.
How many giraffes are there? I feel like it's fewer than 0.31 billion. Like, there can't be more than like a few 100,000 giraffes, right?
I don't know. Do we have any giraffe scientists that we could ask?
I mean, Google probably knows. Let's just find out. Giraffe population. 117,000 individuals.
Cool. So we're well short of that. All right.
Yeah, we could not make a cubic mile of giraffes. Or even less, not even a cubic kilometer. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Also, it's less than I estimated, because I was like, well, I said it couldn't be more than, so I guess technically my estimation was true, but it would have been true if the answer was like 6. So, anyway. So let's take a look at what's coming up on the channel. Vishanti, do you have anything that you want to shill before we go on to what's on my channel? Like maybe, mention that Fossil Daddy video again.
Yes, the Fossil Daddy video, the collaboration that I just did with Fossil Daddy came out. I am going to repaste the link in the chat so you can watch an amusing debunk of a pseudo-historian. And coming up soon, I don't know if it'll be this week, maybe next week. It depends on scheduling. I've been very busy. I will be collaborating with Jordan from Reasons to Doubt and talking about atheism and anti-Semitism.
Which reminds me, Jordan is part of the normal panel for my Cambrian Bunny Awards, which are going to be coming up here in a few months. So we're going to have like the nomination panel probably in like January. And then probably about a month after that, sometime in February, we'll be doing the actual award show. So if you're a fan, this will be the 3rd annual Cambrian Bunny Awards, which is also the origin of Jordan wearing a t-shirt and a bow tie. So if you like that look of his, he did that because I reminded him of what a fancy show this was and how he should dress up. So he threw on a bow tie.
And he did.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look at what's coming up on my channel. So on the 31st, Halloween, we are going to be doing a Halloween episode of Kent with Bent. I don't know to what degree we're going to change it to be Halloween themed, but we'll probably do something to do that. So yeah, if you are not doing like a spooky movie marathon or at a party or out taking kids out trick-or-treating, feel free to come hang out with us. We're going to be debunking Sport
Or at a
Kent
heavy metal concert.
Look,
which is where I will be.
Yeah, okay. But hey, look, much like an 80s slasher villain, Kent Hovind has a body count. So
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Oof.
Then on Thursday, the 2nd, we're going to be doing this will be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. ICR's Nonsense Facts, 53 through 63. That is the finale of that series of videos. Then on the 4th, at the same time as this, we should be doing the next Gish with Vish. Now, I do have to let everyone know, I believe the clock change is on the night of the 4th going into the 5th. So here's one of the things that means, which means that for a few months, times for you on this channel may change because I live in Mountain Standard Time. I never live in Mountain Daylight Time. So when you change the clocks, I will not be changing the clocks. So you're just going to have to deal with it. So, yeah. Hey, maybe now that there's a Speaker of the House, they can pass a bill to get rid of Daylight Savings Time.
That'd be amazing.
I mean, actually, the House has already passed a number of them. They just don't tend to go... Like, both the House and the Senate have passed multiple...
the Senate, yeah.
Yeah, and then they just never pass both.
It's really frustrating.
Yeah.
Plus, this is something that I was reading about this morning. The cycle... I don't want to say the cycle. You know what? Let me rephrase that sentence.
Okay.
Deer are diurnal, so they're most active around dawn and dusk. And when we switch over to...
That's crepuscular.
Out of daylight savings time, it actually puts people's commutes right smack dab in the middle of like some of their most active periods. So people's instance of hitting deer go way up.
That's
don't like that. If you live in a place where you've ever had deer running all over the road, hitting them is not fun.
Also, mostly active around dusk and dawn is crepuscular.
Crepuscular.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to get out of here. I hope to see all of you on Tuesday for Kent with Bent, the Spooktacular. Remember, if you say spook, you're wrong. You have to have a treble in there. It's spook.
Spook.
Exactly. All right. See you later, everybody. Thank you very much. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Tovand, Whispers, Denny5252, Elron Teller, Phil Prevara, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostick Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Monkey They Them, Sphincter of Doom, Strawberry Vein, Star Runner, and Dr. Tapioca Weasel. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and join the Patreon, either virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.